Perspective and compromise. They're the qualities you're going to need if you are looking to buy a home in the nation's most expensive cities, Sydney and Melbourne.
And new data out today shows that while the median house price in both cities is well over $1 million, there are still options for those working on a smaller budget. For more, let's bring in Domain property editor Alice Stolz. Alice, good morning. What are the median house prices in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane?
Good morning, guys. Well, the median house price in Brisbane is just a whisker over $800,000. Now, in Melbourne, it's just over $1 million. And in Sydney, it's $1.4 million. So you can really see the appeal of why many people have kind of embraced that idea that Queensland's beautiful one day, perfect the next, and put their money into the Queensland market. But, of course, not everybody can move to Queensland. So we thought we'd look at some other options of what you can do for that price in Melbourne and Sydney.
All right, hit us with it. What can you do?
Look, guys, it's all about perspective and compromise. So when I say that, I think if you are in Sydney and you do want to live in an inner city area under 5 k's from the CBD, have a look at units. Ultimo, Rushcutters Bay and Glebe. Now, these are all fantastic areas, 2 k's from the city, where you can get a property price under that Brisbane median, $800,000. If you're looking at houses, though, you need to go a little bit further out, like to an area like Ingleburn, for example. Now, that's a beautiful area, great national park nearby. So I suppose what I'm saying is if you're willing to go a bit further out and you do want a house, there are options for you. Now, turning to Melbourne, you can obviously, Melbourne, a great place to live, and you can look at areas like Fitzroy, Port Melbourne and Kew if you are looking for those unit prices in those areas. So again, there's a compromise to be made. If you do want to have a house, try looking at areas a little bit further out in suburbs such as Braybrook, Pascoe Vale or Heidelberg West. So I hope what we're doing today is just saying to people, if you are willing to make a few tweaks to what it is you want in a property, there are ways to get into the market that are in that 800k range.
OK, Alice, moving on. How the market is going right now. What did clearance rates look like last weekend?
Well, clearance rates were actually quite strong last weekend. We did have a holiday in many states around the country, though, but you can see Adelaide hit 75% and Sydney hit 68%, and that had quite a lot of auctions last weekend, and Melbourne got to 68%. But again, long weekend, so let's not crack open the champagne just yet and wait to see what happens. Now, in terms of auction numbers today, really quite a lot of buying opportunity for many people, particularly in Melbourne. I saw open house for sale today boards all over Melbourne today when I came in, nearly 1,000 auctions in Melbourne and 636 in Sydney. So you can see this could be one of the last sort of hurrahs before we start going into that wind down time of the year with school holidays fast approaching.
Hot day, hot property in Melbourne.
Yeah. All right. Let us dream. Tell us about the most expensive home to sell this week.
Yeah, Jane, it was a house on the upper north shore of Sydney last weekend. It sold for $6.95 in St Ives in Sydney, a beautiful new build home. And you can see, though, that price is considerably down on what we have seen what that house has gone for in the past few weeks, but still a lot of money. Now, turning to the most affordable property last week, it was a little unit near Townsville Airport in North Ward, Queensland, really close to the beach, and I can think of a great probably Airbnb opportunity for someone. And it's sold for $186,000.
Wow, OK.
Let's get dreaming. There's a pretty amazing home, I'm informed, in Queensland on the market. What can you tell us about it?
I think you're going to want this one. This is the most epic property. Just to really whet your appetite, it's in Queensland. It's on Castaway Beach in Queensland. A 16-metre wet edge pool, a 12.5-metre touch tennis court, as every home needs, as well as 2 mini golf greens and a basketball ring. And the bar comes with 6 bar taps, drinks, fridge. I mean, you could be literally living your best life here. If you want to know the price, you're going to have to call the agent. We couldn't get the price for you, but, I mean, you can only dream, can't you?
It's like a hotel.
It does look like a hotel. It looks delightful. Thank you, Alice.
Better call the removalist.
Not likely.
Thanks, Alice.
The sudden collapse of 3 US banks in the last week is spooking share markets right across the globe, including here in Australia. But despite the fear, there may also be some good news for Australians, particularly when it comes to rising interest rates. So what does it all mean? Let's bring in Research Director at Rate City, Sally Tindall. Good morning to you, Sally. First of all, let's start with what caused these US banks to fail.
Well, ultimately, Jane, it was a run on deposits. Customers all taking their money out at once. But you've got to look at the lead up for Silicon Valley Bank Bank in particular, they had predominantly tech-based customers. Now, some of those startups got the wobbles and they wanted their money back. But the bank had invested in long-term bonds and the value of those bonds had gone down as a result of rising interest rates. And so when the customers wanted their money back, they had to sell the bonds at a loss. And they could have contained all of this. However, Twitter got hold of this. It spread like wildfire, and suddenly a vast majority of their customers are all panicking, thinking they're going to take their money back. That's when the regulators had to step in and shut down the bank. And then, of course, it spread to two others where they had to shut down Signature Bank just moments later. First Heritage also got the wobbles as well.
So these are all banks that sort of work in that tech space.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley Bank, though, is the largest one to fail since 2008, which, of course, makes people worry, could this mean another GFC? Is that likely?
Well, look, you've got to look at the fact that it was a very unique set of circumstances. So I don't think it's likely at this point in time. The US regulators came in really quickly and guaranteed everyone's deposits. Typically, they guarantee everyone's deposits per account, per person, up to $250,000. That's the same as here in Australia. They've stepped in and said, you know what, we're guaranteeing all deposits. And that's really helped calm things down. But what is concerning is how a crack just came a complete collapse within the space of hours, really, at the end of the day, and that has people rattled.
All right, there's another global bank that's in trouble, Credit Suisse. It's been, sort of in trouble for a little while. What is happening there, and could that have any impact here?
Yeah, OK, so Credit Suisse, quite a different set of circumstances. They've had just a run of scandal after scandal after scandal, tax evasion, espionage, corporate espionage, money laundering, a chain of CEOs coming and going. So the problems have been deep-seated. But of course, the events in the US have got things rattled in the EU as well. And one of their biggest investors, or their biggest investor, came out and said they're not tipping any more money in, which saw the share price tank. But again, the Swiss National Bank stepped in, said, we'll give you over $80 billion to shore things up. And that has really helped steady the ship.
Well, let's get to what this all means here. What does it mean for the Australian banking system and, most importantly, for people with a mortgage, interest rates?
Absolutely. Look, global things that happen globally really do rattle the whole markets, but our banks are on incredibly solid ground, and so they can absorb shocks like this. They have to hold a significant amount of capital. Since the GFC and the Royal Commission, they've really made sure that people are borrowing responsibly. These things hold us in good stead. You only have to look at Australia's biggest bank's profits, $5.15 billion in their half-year profits. That was a record, to know that we're on solid ground here. But the big question is, what does this mean for rates? In the US, there's speculation that they might even pause next week. They were talking about a double hike. Now people are talking about a pause. The same conversation is happening here. What does it mean for the RBA? Will they pause in April? Look, Westpac came out just yesterday and said they think that the RBA will now pause in April. They think that the global factors, combined with the fact that the RBA was considering it, means that, yes, they will pause. But then you've got, ANZ, NAB, CBA, they all think the RBA will push ahead with a 0.25% hike. They've got to get the inflation problem under control. Yes, there's spot fires, but they'll be putting them out, isolated, hopefully, and pushing ahead with the inflation task.
We'll all be watching with interest, Sally. Thank you.
Hey there, Today fans. Sarah and...
What's my name again?
Oh my goodness, Carl.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel, though. Subscribe now for more news, special reports and amazing Aussie stories.
And Carl misbehaving,
Whoa,
of course.
That never happens.
Always happens.
What's she talking about?